Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has long been billed by his supporters as Mr. Security. But after facing corruption charges and protests inside Israel over his efforts at judicial reform, Netanyahu now has a lot to explain on the security front. After the deadly surprise attack by Hamas this weekend, Netanyahu's reputation as Mr. Security is openly and actively being called into question, and he is not the only one. As former New York Times Jerusalem bureau chief Jody Rudorin puts it, the failure of Israeli and U.S. intelligence to detect plans for this unprecedented coordinated assault and Israel's inadequate response in the first 36 hours afterward will rightly be the subject of investigatory commissions and commentary for months to come. The most plausible explanation I have heard so far is that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing government took its eye off the ball, moving thousands of troops from the Gaza command to protect Israeli settlers in the occupied West Bank and focusing far too much energy on suppressing pro-democracy protests rather than thwarting actual threats. Joining me now is the author of that, Jody Rudorin, editor-in-chief of The Forward. Jody, thanks for being here. I'd love to get your assessment of just sort of the landscape for Netanyahu domestically in the wake of this horrific, brutal attack.
You know, it's interesting, Alex, you referred to him as Mr. Security. And I mean, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who I covered for 4 years when I was there as bureau chief, he sees himself as the protector of Israel and actually the whole Jewish people from the existential threat of Iran and from threats. And he has won elections over and over again based on fear, based on the idea that Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran presented these threats to Israel. However, he is not a warmongering leader. He has actually showed a lot of restraint in his prior outings with Gaza and in other settings. And so this is a new framework for him, as well as because of the political context that you set us up with. So what is likely to happen, I think, is there will be a unity government. There are negotiations going on right now to bring some of these opposition leaders into this government. The question really is whether Netanyahu will be forced to kick out some of the right-wing ministers that he has made his coalition with so far, or whether those people will enter without conditions. And there will likely be a broader government soon to prosecute this war on Hamas. But I think it's hard to imagine, I mean, in many ways, it's hard to imagine any politician surviving the sort of massive screw-up that led to this attack. That said, Netanyahu is a politician with more than 9 lives. I mean, he has resurrected himself and made deals with different politicians over and over and over again, so nobody should count him out.
I do wonder, you know, from the outside, it looks like there's remarkable nationwide unity in this moment. And I'm sure when it concerns the victims of these barbaric attacks, that stands true. But you've seemed to suggest that there is actually, I mean, there's a real push for reform even as the mourning continues.
I mean, I think there's a bunch of strands to this, Alex. This is a tiny country, and so there's a lot of unity around the tragedy, in part because everybody is affected. Everybody I know knows somebody who was killed, was kidnapped, is deploying, all of those things. It's hard for us, I think, to imagine how affected everyone in the country is directly. That said, I would say that the open questioning of the government's response in the first 2 days especially is something I've never seen before at a time of war. In 2014 and in 2012, when the wars broke out in Gaza, you saw a different kind of unity, a sort of we all stand together when we're under threat. And this time I've seen just open questioning of the leadership. The third thing that's worth looking at is the protest movement that has been this kind of remarkable force in Israeli society, bringing out more than 100,000 people every week for 40 weeks, and showing the stark divisions across society. Those people, those organizers, are now organizing a lot of the civilian response. They're the ones who are helping people get resettled and evacuate. They're the ones who are helping clean up. That makes a lot of sense in terms of the military massing on the border, but given the frustration with the slow response on Saturday, to now see that the brothers in arms, the reservists who were resisting who are leading the pro-democracy movement and resisting the judicial overhaul, now they're the ones who are responding to this tragedy in the most direct kind of public service way, I think says a lot about the long-term impact of those protests.
Just one more for you, Jody. There is some theorizing that Hamas was trying to capitalize on division within Israel in terms of the timing of these attacks. Do you have a theory on that?
I mean, I think that's a solid theory. I believe that's part of it. I also believe there's credence to the idea that whether Iran actually orchestrated this attack or simply encouraged it in its general backing of Hamas because of the impending negotiations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, both of those things make a lot of sense to me. I also think that Hamas wanted to attack when it could attack. So yeah. I guess the real question is, in the past, we have seen Hamas and Islamic Jihad also show some restraint because of the inevitable level of retaliation. So it's very surprising that they have the capabilities to launch such an assault, but it's also interesting that they would take such a risk. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to imagine the fallout.
It is all hard to imagine, even as we see it play out on our screens. Jody Rudoran, thank you so much for your time tonight.